Welcome to TYRO TV. I'm Ron Tijerina.
And I'm Cathy Tijerina. And Ron and I are the co-founders, co-directors of the Ridge Project, and the co-creators of TYRO.
TYRO is a Latin word which means apprentice, novice, someone learning something new.
Ooh,
ready?
Yeah.
A warrior. Someone who was willing and able and really to get in it, right? Mm-hmm. Get in it and get what done. Create a legacy that will outlast you.
Absolutely. Ron and I learned through our 15 years of incarceration experience what it took to overcome every obstacle that we faced in order to build a strong, thriving, healthy family. And now our passion is to help other people coming behind us do the same thing.
Not only do we teach people to live and to live righteously, right? But to embrace every pitfall, every challenge they face in life, not run from it. Mm-hmm. So we teach people how to face everything and recover. And so you're in the right place. If you're looking for a change, if you're looking where you can grow and you can evolve and you can become that man, that dad that you know you can be, you are in the right spot.
Absolutely, because our philosophy is that life is a continuous improvement plan. You will never be perfect, but that's okay. Your goal is not perfection, it's to become healthy. And when you make that your goal, you can celebrate every step along the way. Because you know your story's not over as long as you have breath.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Say that again. Say that again. That's a good word.
Because you know you still have the opportunity to continue to get better as long as you still have breath.
So as long as you have breath, your story is not over. Man, you know how many times we have to tell people that? Because they come to a place in their life where they say, you know what?
It's too late for me.
It's woe is me attitude. Yeah, it's too late for me. I'll never amount to nothing. Nobody wants me. And we tell them, listen, your story's not over. And so today's word is going to be a little bit tricky here today. We want to talk about what we're facing in our country today. Right. This pandemic, this epidemic, this crisis.
This national or actually international health crisis. And how is it affecting you? Particularly, we want to know, what have you learned about yourself?
During this pandemic,
yes,
right? During this COVID-19 lockdown period, you know, this restricted movement, you know, and I hear out here in the streets, they call this what we're experiencing a lockdown. You know, they're locking everything down. But we know, guys,
and Ron's like, this is not a lockdown.
This is not a lockdown. Now, I will say, maybe it's a restricted movement.
Right. And maybe you guys, a lot of you inside the institutions are experiencing a lockdown. And so we want to help you use this to your advantage and take advantage of every single opportunity to become better.
So what we're talking about today is, what have you learned about yourself during this time?
So stay tuned. We're going to be right back. You don't want to miss this.
TYRO Dads will help you to see who you really are on the inside by coming to terms with your past, present, and future. You'll begin to move forward by using your time on the inside to transform yourself. We know you're not the only one serving time. Your family is too. Overcoming the issues that existed prior to and during incarceration are often more than what many families can survive. TYRO Dads has a unique method of reaching and healing families based on Ron and Catherine Tijerina's own personal experiences. TYRO Dads works exclusively with incarcerated fathers who have minor children. The program lasts for 10 weeks and focuses on intensive character development. You'll be taught to take responsibility for your actions. To own it, you'll be prepared to overcome the obstacles of incarceration and transition back into your home and community, both successfully and permanently. Upon successful completion of this program, you will earn the title of TYRO, which means a warrior, someone learning something new. You will be one of the honored, a man worth following. If you think you have what it takes to be a TYRO, or you want to know more, contact your local project facilitator or your institution staff.
Welcome back to TYRO TV. I'm Ron Tijerina.
And I'm Cathy Tijerina.
And today we're talking about, what have you learned about yourself during this pandemic?
During the shutdown, or you may even be experiencing a lockdown, what have you learned? And so we really want you to understand what the question is. What are we asking you? We're asking you, so from the time that they said, okay, no more visits, okay, we're restricting movement, okay, whatever the other extra things that got imposed upon you, what happened? What about your character rose to the forefront, right? What all of a sudden did you become aware of, whether it is positive or negative? Every time that there's a change in our culture, every time there's a change in our routine, something is revealed to us about ourselves.
So did you take it personal, or did you look at the opportunity as a way to grow? Did you become really negative? Did you become positive in the moment? You know, what did you learn about you during this lockdown period in your life, when you found out you couldn't get no visits, when you found out the phone calls might be restricted, when you found out that just life is going to change for you? Because already, when I remember doing time, that whenever a change came, man, was it uncomfortable.
Oh my.
Man,
yes.
just when you thought you got a routine going, just when you figured it out, right? Boom, your world gets turned upside down once again.
And so the question is, did you have a temper tantrum? Are you irritable? Are you short-tempered? Is everything starting to bother you? Little things like all of a sudden become big things in your life? And the chances are that's probably true, because we are experiencing that out here. We're working with a lot of families that are saying, wow, I have never had so much restricted movement. And now all of a sudden I find that, you know what? I'm anxious, I'm frustrated. And then we also have families that say, you know what? I'm really taking advantage of this time to learn a new skill. I'm really taking advantage of this time to invest in my family. And so we want you to really think about, from the time that the lockdown or the pandemic hit and things changed in your routine, what was your response? What are some things that you began to think, or ways that you began to act that maybe surprised you? What are those things?
And if you're not even conscious of them, we want you to take the time to just take a moment. Think about this. What did you do in place of whatever they removed? Right? What did you encourage other people, or did you find yourself draped in the conversation where everything was so negative? Every word that came out of people's mouths were backbiting, and they were talking bad about staff. They were talking bad about the institution, talking bad about, and even fear, right? Even maybe people might have been putting fear in you about your families and what's going on out here. How did you respond or react to what was happening? And we want to talk about this today, because this is going to determine how you respond to when you do come home, Dad.
Right.
When you get home, because guess what? Your world out here is going to change. It's going to flip. And you got to be ready to pivot, right? So in another sense, did you pivot in a way that brought strength, that brought balance, that brought fairness, that brought peace in your environment? First and foremost, within yourself? Or was the fear or the unknown so overwhelming that maybe you couldn't even adapt? Maybe you found yourself going to the hole. Maybe you found yourself always fighting with your bunkmate. Maybe you found yourself fighting with your spouse, your significant other, or the person in your relationship with family members over the phone, and never finding that positive note. What is it what happened to you, whether it be positive or negative, when you found out?
Yeah. What did you learn about you? And so as Ron, as you were talking about pivoting, oh my goodness, talk about pivoting, because your whole schedule changed. All the rules suddenly changed on you. And so we all know, we've all heard the old adage, maybe from your grandma, maybe from people around you, that when pressure is applied, your true nature, your true character comes to the surface. And so surely, and I know if you just stop and think about it a minute, that you've learned something about you. This is so important, because now your self-awareness is increasing. So as your self-awareness is increasing, what are you learning about you? What about your character do you know now that you weren't aware of before your culture and your schedule changed?
Now, I bet most of you haven't even been thinking about this. Most of you had just been going through life, just, every day, just doing time, and just trying to make the best of it, but not really engaging in your thought process and self-examining yourself. Okay, so this is happening. What's happening to me inside? How am I responding to this situation? And not even really asking yourself some key questions to determine if you're getting better or are you becoming bitter. Right? Because you got to be conscious of what's happening outside of you, because a lot of times we let what's happening outside of us determine what's happening inside of us instead of the other way around, because how we respond inside is going to determine how we respond to what's happening outside.
Absolutely. As change happens, it can't help but affect us. It doesn't matter what type of change. And across a lifetime, you're going to encounter challenges and changes. And so your awareness is what we're talking about today. Are you aware of what you've learned about you since the pandemic hit? Did you learn that you're more patient than you thought? Did you learn that you're okay in silence? Did you learn that you're not okay? Did you learn that fear is still a hold of you? What are the things you learned? This is really important. And we're going to talk in the next segment more about why this is so important before we move on to, how do you actually use this time to really exponentially increase your learning.
So take out a sheet of paper, grab a pen, and get ready to write some notes down, because we guarantee you this episode is going to help empower you on not only evolve and grow and become stronger while you're going through this new phase in your life, but when you hit the streets, you're ready for it.
And you'll be ready to lead your children and your family well. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to TYRO TV. I'm Ron Tijerina.
And I'm Cathy Tijerina.
And today we're talking about what have you learned about yourself during this change, this pandemic, this COVID-19 in your life? What have you learned about you?
And we talked a little bit in our first segment about, okay, what are we really talking about? We're talking about increased self-awareness. Now, we really want to hit home on why it's so important to take advantage of every change in your life to learn something more about you. Because as you increase your self-awareness, you can increase your discipline.
Self-control.
Self-control, right? You can increase your resiliency. You get to increase your self-regulation. All of those things are tied together. But if you're not aware of your strengths, if you're not aware of your weaknesses, and you continue to become more and more aware of those things, then you are going to become stuck. And this is really important, because if you can learn to do this, then you can teach your kids that, you know what, no matter what happens, whether it appears to be positive or negative, there's opportunity to learn and grow in every circumstance.
Now, another way to phrase what we're talking about is, what have you learned about yourself during this pandemic and actually throughout your entire incarceration? Because you're supposed to be on this continuous self-improvement plan, right? So what have you learned that your triggers? What are your triggers in your life? Whether it be something that brings joy to you or something that brings negativity up, and it rises up. You know, how are you amplifying your response to certain situations in your life? What is triggering you to become kind? What is triggering you to be mean or angry or backbiting and all these type of negative attributes? Know your triggers. If there's things in your life that cause you to do things that are dishonorable to yourself, what are the triggers in your life that are triggering that thought process to happen? Because I know for a fact that some people that are incarcerated, when this happened, threw a temper tantrum, really got upset, cussed people out, you know, blamed everybody else, and you know, just, you know, it is what it is.
And then what happens is, now all the progress that they've made has become unraveled, and their reputation is set back. Did you hear that? So all the progress they made in reestablishing a positive reputation inside, a positive reputation with their family, a positive reputation with their children, all of a sudden became unraveled, because they became unraveled. They were so rattled by this new circumstance that they blew up, right? And so now they've got all this work to do. The foundation that they laid has crumbled, and they've got to start all over. On the flip side, we also know people that, you know what, when this hit, it really caused them to rise to the challenge and exemplify leadership in new ways. They reached out and began to help people around them, to connect more with their family, to find new ways to stay connected to their family, and to pour into their family, understanding that their family is also going through a really difficult time.
So some men found opportunities to really go and minister to other people, to help them deal with the depression that might be coming in, to help them, listen, we know you're not going to be able to connect with your family for a while. How can we help you cope, right? Because, hey, listen, you know, the saying out here is, we're in this together. Guess what? You're in this together. We are all in this together. Everybody has been affected or infected by this epidemic, by this pandemic called COVID-19. There is not no single one person who has not been touched in one way or another by this situation.
And if you fail to learn in the midst of circumstances more about yourself, then you fail to grow. And so, because life is always changing, life is going to change, and the world is going to change whether or not you change. So you are either going to keep pace, you're going to outpace, or you're going to fall behind. Let me say that again. You are either going to keep pace, outpace, or fall behind. You're never going to just stay the same, right? Because the world is moving so fast. So if you don't continually learn more about you and you don't learn about, hey, you know what, this is what causes me to really struggle, then you're going to suffer and your family's going to suffer. You're going to watch your relationships start to disintegrate. This opportunity that you have as everything is shifting and changing is maybe a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because the whole world is experiencing the same thing together. So you have the opportunity to look at your life in a brand new light. And you also have the opportunity to learn more about your family. So what did you learn about you that you can apply to relating better to your family?
Why is this important? Is because how you handle this situation right now. Because, you know, this is new to all of us, right? Everybody, right? And so how you handle and conduct yourself during this time. Now, you're incarcerated. Your playing field isn't very big, right? But you can infect your playing field with a negative attitude. Or you can affect it in a way that even in the midst of where you're at, even in the size of your circumference of where you're located at, you can bring positive change to everyone around you. But if you're taking it personal, that this is all about you.
If you're having a temper tantrum.
And you're not, because you can't call home, you're not getting the visits, and you can't seem to adapt to this situation and grow, you know, this is still showing where you're at as a man of honor, as a man of good character. Because if you're still a man with little boy issues, right, our grandkids, they might throw temper tantrums because they can't go play baseball. Right. But if you're throwing a temper tantrum because you can't play softball.
Right. Or because you can't get the things you want, then that shows an area of weakness that you still need to work on. And so you can use it as a learning opportunity so that you can continue to grow and get better. The more knowledge you have, the more equipped you are to overcome every single obstacle.
So when we come back, we're going to talk about how to apply this in your life. How do you really become conscious and with purpose of wanting to recognize what you're learning about yourself during this situation?
So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to TYRO TV. I'm Ron Tijerina.
And I'm Cathy Tijerina.
And today we're talking about what have you learned about yourself during this pandemic.
Ooh-wee.
Yep.
And I'm sure that most of you haven't even really stopped to think about, wow, what am I learning about me? I mean, you might have learned something without being really conscious about it, but now really stepping back and thinking about what is it I'm learning about me in the midst of all this chaos. Because if you learn that, you know what, if you have a blocked want that you have a temper tantrum, which means maybe you can't go to commissary and so you're having a temper tantrum and you're all mad. Well, guess what? Out here, the same things happen. We go to the grocery store and the shelves are empty. The meat cases are empty. And so we can either have a temper tantrum and ruin the rest of our life and drop little pieces of poop all over in our relationship, or
don't drop poop.
Don't drop poop, that's right. Or we can say, okay, so that's not available. What can I do different to make sure that I'm making the best of this circumstance?
And real quick, before we talk about the house, right, we'll give you an example of what's taking place out here. Right now, currently, there are grocery stores, there are chains of stores, they're not taking cash.
Right.
They stopped taking literal cash. They're not giving you change back. They just they're not taking your dollars. You either show up with a piece of plastic or you don't walk out with the goods. And is that frustrating? Absolutely.
Really?
But do you take it personal?
No. Right?
Right? Because it ain't about me.
Right.
Right? Okay, so the first one I want to throw out there that can help you really become self-aware, because that's what we're talking about. Self-examination. What is it you're supposed to learn out of this experience, right? Start a journal. Number one, start a journal, writing down what you're experiencing, what your day is like. Start a story about you.
Yes, especially during this unprecedented time. Because as you journal this, not only are you going to learn more, but you're going to have things you can share with your family, with your children, with one day with your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So begin to journal so that you can learn more and become more self-aware. And so the second one is, as you're journaling, you're going to want to identify both your strengths and your weaknesses. What are your triggers? What is causing you to rise up and be a leader and actually say, hey, this is a strength of mine. When the pressure was applied, I was able to do A, B, and C. Or, wow, you know what? This is a weakness of mine.
And if you recognize the weakness in your life, do not run from it.
Right.
Acknowledge it. You don't got to stay there. You got to dwell there, but you got to acknowledge it. A lot of times, men in prison are in denial. Come on, dads. Where we don't want to say where we're weak at, because then if somebody finds out we acknowledge where we're weak at, then it makes us look weak, makes us stand weak. Guess what? Each and every one of you have weaknesses and strength.
Absolutely.
Right?
Because remember, we said there's no such thing as perfect. There's only healthy. Right? And in order to be healthy, you have to recognize what your strengths and weaknesses are and what things trigger those, right? What propels you to greatness and what holds you back. Because only then can you develop a plan to be able to overcome them, which brings us to number 3. Be purposeful in increasing your self-awareness. When you start to feel frustrated or irritated and you start to feel angry, stop. Ask yourself, why am I all of a sudden feeling angry? What just happened? What did I hear? What did I see? What did I think that triggered this emotion inside of me?
So this is where you get to talk to yourself.
That's right.
And this is really important. Talk to yourself. Ask yourself these questions that Cathy just broke down. If you don't ask yourself these list of questions, guess what? You will never become self-aware. You will always be out wandering and wandering within your life. But the reason why most of us, right, when you found yourself in prison, you're there, is because we never stopped to ask ourselves the question, why am I throwing a temper tantrum? Why am I taking this personal? Why am I upset? Why do I feel this way? You know, who am I in this situation? How do I see myself in this relationship? Stop and ask yourself, what's going on with you?
Ooh, absolutely. Because you cannot control anybody else. You can contribute and deposit and invest in other people's lives, but you can only control you. Any frustration or anger or irritability doesn't come from somebody else. It comes from something inside of you, some sort of a trigger, right? And then that trigger actually then is expressed in some way. And so if you start feeling angry and frustrated, and you go back and you say, wow, why am I angry and frustrated? Why am I all of a sudden irritable? Oh, wow. I'm irritable because, you know what, I don't like to go hungry, because it triggers inside of me, you know, being hungry, being without, being forgot, whatever it is. Wow, I got to work on that. I have to work on that and recenter myself. So now you've learned something great about you that's going to help you in the future.
So as you're doing this, write it in your journal.
Yes.
Write it in your journal so you can look at it, so you can see what it is. Get it out. Mm-hmm. Get it out. If you keep it in, it becomes like a poison.
Right.
Right? It becomes a poison. Get it out. And then also write down the positive things that you recognize about yourself, your strengths. Mm-hmm. Write them down. But if you know that you take everything personal, write down that list. What is it you take personal?
And why? Why are you taking it all personal? The why is so important, because once you know the why, it increases your self-awareness and you're able to regulate it. You can do self-talk in your head and say, wait a minute, I'm taking this personal because it sounded like so-and-so's voice from my childhood, and I heard those same words, and now all of a sudden I feel discounted, disrespected. I need to take a minute and remind myself that I can center myself.
And I love that, Cathy. Self-talk. Mm-hmm. Self-talk is so crucial to your own evolution, to your growth, to where you want to be, Dad. Because once you can hear yourself talk for real, listen to your voice, and the voice of reasoning in your own mind, right? And be honest with yourself. What is it that's setting you off, right? If you're taking something personal, ask yourself, why? Why am I taking this personal when you know it's got nothing to do with you?
Right. Yes, so when we come back, we're going to give you some final tips and wrap this subject up for today. So stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to TYRO TV. I'm Ron Tijerina.
And I'm Cathy Tijerina.
Today we've been talking about knowing who you are, or learning who you are during this pandemic.
Yeah, what have you learned about you since the pandemic happened? And that's really important because everybody is learning something new about themselves. They're learning, wow, you know what? Maybe I don't have the technology information that I need to have. Wow, you know what? I learned that maybe I've been running too fast and not spending enough time in my family. Or I've learned that, you know what, I don't like to be locked down, and so I have to find something to do.
So out here, gentlemen, that's what's happening with the families and the people out here. Guess what? We're slowed down. You know, they even say that the earth is now healing at such a rapid rate. Why? Because everything is slowed down, which is pretty incredible. Great footage out here, guys.
Yeah.
But as a family, we've learned that we were running so hard that now we're able to take care of some of the things that we've been neglecting, telling ourselves, you know what, when we get time, we'll get to it. Or, you know what, I'll get to it next week.
We'll just put it in the attic and we'll deal with it later. Ugh.
Guess what? We're dealing with the later now.
That's right.
And the greatest thing about it is we're enjoying each other's company.
Yes.
We're spending a lot more quality time together. We're not always just running and running and running. We're walking. You know, and
We're
sometimes
skipping
skipping and crawling. We're moving slow because the world is slowed down out here, where it's giving us time to breathe.
So you might be thinking, oh yeah, well, if I was home with my family, I'd feel the same way. But the truth is, if you can't find joy and happiness in the moment you're in, you're never going to find it in some sort of future far off moment. And so that joy might be in writing letters. It might be in sending emails. It might be in if you do video visits. Whatever it is, find a way to connect with your family right now that brings you joy, where you can invest in your family. Find ways to invest in your own self-improvement. The more you learn about you, the more you recognize the places that you need to grow, the better equipped you are to help your family grow. It is so important, Dad, because I don't care what anybody else tells you, your kids need you. You.
But if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what your strengths are, if you don't know what your weaknesses are, if you don't know your value, right? If you're still living each day, even inside there, because in the past, I know some of us have lived check by check with that check by check mentality, right? And if you're living day by day in there and not building a future for yourself and your family while you're in there, then when you get home, if you're not practicing those principles inside, I almost guarantee you, you're not going to practice those principles outside because it's going to be too fast for you.
Right. And the same reasons that are holding you back in there will be the same reasons that will hold you back out here. So we want to encourage you, take advantage of this time to increase your self-awareness, invest in becoming better, and therefore invest in your family and their continuous improvement.
So thank you for letting us be part of your journey right here on TYRO TV. So, and always remember, until next time,
that we are rooting for you.